What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary actors finally loses patience with a TV host who refuses to show basic respect? In less than 45 seconds, Michael Strahan's smug disrespect wouldn't just cross the line, it would ignite a live-on-air showdown so explosive, it ended with Denzel Washington walking out and leaving morning television history in ruins. It was early morning at the Good Morning America studio. The lights were bright, almost too bright, and the set had that calm before the storm kind of quiet. The crew moved around. There was tension in the air that no one could quite explain. A couple of staff members whispered near the cameras. "Strahan's planning to throw some tough questions today. This might get messy." Everyone pretended not to hear, but they all felt it. Denzel Washington sat in his chair, relaxed but focused, wearing a sharp navy suit. He looked like a man ready to talk about his work. Calm, grounded, professional. Across from him, Michael Strahan adjusted his tie, gave a quick grin to the camera, and waited for the cue. The red light blinked on. They were live. Strahan leaned back in his chair, flipping through his cue cards lazily before closing them with a soft slap. "So, Denzel," he began, his tone light but sharp around the edges, "you've got another movie coming out. Tell us, what makes this one different from all the others?" The question sounded simple enough, but the way he said it carried something else. A hint of sarcasm, a touch of boredom. Denzel smiled politely, ready to answer, but then Strahan tilted his head and added with a smirk, "Actually, do you plan on saying anything new this time? Or is it gonna be the usual art, meaning, and depth speech again?" For a second, the studio went completely still. Denzel paused. Not long, just enough to let the silence hang. His smile didn't fade, but his eyes shifted, sharp and steady. He looked at Strahan like a man who just realized this wasn't a friendly interview. The camera zoomed in slowly, catching every tiny movement. The flick of Strahan's eyebrow, the tightening of Denzel's jaw, the faint shift in his shoulders. Strahan's grin grew tighter, like he was enjoying the discomfort in the room. "Come on, Denzel," he said, chuckling under his breath. "You can't get offended over a few honest questions. I mean, you've been doing this for what, 40 years? Don't you ever get tired of playing the same serious, moody guy? Maybe it's time to give the audience something new, something that doesn't put them to sleep." The laugh that followed wasn't friendly. It was the kind of laugh meant to sting. Denzel's expression didn't change, but his silence was louder than any words. He waited until the laugh died, then said quietly, "You think you're being clever, but there's a difference between clever and cruel." Strahan leaned forward, trying to hold eye contact, trying to prove he was in control. "Cruel? Come on, man. I'm just saying what people are thinking. Not everyone's sitting around watching your deep emotional dramas anymore. Times change. Maybe the audience has moved on." Denzel finally leaned in too, their faces just a few feet apart, his voice low but razor sharp. "Maybe the audience hasn't moved on," he said. "Maybe the hosts have lowered the bar." The crowd gasped. The words landed like a punch. Strahan forced a smirk, but his eyes flickered. Just a second of panic. "So now I'm the bad guy because I'm doing my job?" he shot back. "No," Denzel said evenly. "You're the bad guy because you forgot what your job is. It's to listen, not to tear down." Strahan's face hardened. "You take yourself too seriously, man. Maybe that's the problem. You think being intense makes you interesting. But out here, people want real. They want fun. They want something that feels alive." Denzel nodded slowly. "And this, what you're doing now, does that feel alive to you?" Strahan blinked. "What do you mean?" Denzel's tone turned colder, each word measured. "I mean this act. The smirks, the fake jokes, the need to make someone else small so you can feel big. Does that make you feel alive, Michael? Or just empty?" A hush fell over the studio. You could hear the hum of the lights, the shuffle of someone shifting in their seat. Strahan's charm was cracking, his voice suddenly sharper. "You're twisting my words. I'm just asking the questions people are afraid to ask you." Denzel tilted his head slightly, calm as ever. "No," he said. "You're asking the questions that make you feel powerful. There's a difference, Strahan scoffed, sitting back, his confidence starting to slip. Man, you actors, always playing the victim. Denzel smiled faintly, but it wasn't friendly. And you hosts, he said softly, always mistaking cruelty for courage. For a moment no one spoke. The tension was suffocating, the kind that makes even the air feel heavy. Strahan tried to laugh it off again, but it sounded forced this time. Hey, it's all love, Denzel. Don't take it personal. Denzel's eyes narrowed. When a man disrespects your work, your integrity, and your time, it's not personal. It's intentional. The camera caught Strahan's face freeze for a split second, his polished TV persona slipping away. Strahan's smile returned, but this time it looked colder, calculated. He leaned back in his chair, pretending to relax, but there was a glint of malice in his eyes. You keep talking about art and legacy, he said casually, but let's be real for a second. Young people aren't watching your movies anymore. Denzel didn't flinch, but the audience murmured quietly, sensing where this was headed. Strahan picked up a tablet from the table, swiping it with an exaggerated motion. You say they connect with your stories, he continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm, but how many young people chose The Equalizer over TikTok last year? He turned the screen toward the cameras so everyone could see. Box office numbers don't lie, Denzel. People have moved on. The crew froze. Even the sound tech in the corner stopped adjusting his mixer. The tablet screen gleamed under the studio lights, charts, percentages, big red arrows pointing down. Denzel looked at it, then back at Strahan, his face unreadable. The silence stretched long enough to make Strahan uncomfortable. Finally, Denzel leaned forward slightly, his voice low but clear enough for the microphones to catch every word. You're right, he said softly. Numbers don't lie. Then he paused, letting the quiet build until it felt unbearable. But sometime, he continued, people do. The line hit like a thunderclap. A few in the audience gasped. One of the camera operators glanced at the producer, who looked like she might faint. Strahan forced a laugh, trying to recover. Hey man, no offense, I'm just showing facts. Denzel didn't break eye contact. Facts? He repeated. You think a spreadsheet defines truth? Those numbers don't measure the lives changed by a story. They don't measure heart. They only measure what you can sell. His voice dropped even lower, sharper now. And that's your problem, Michael. You only respect what sells. Strahan's fake charm cracked. He tried to smile again, but his voice trembled slightly. It's just business, he said defensively. You of all people should know that. Denzel shook his head. No, he replied, it's not business. It's cowardice, dressed up as honesty. The studio went completely still. No one dared move. Every camera was locked on Denzel's face, the quiet power in his eyes burning through the screen. You came here to make a headline, he said, his tone calm but merciless. But what you just made, Michael, is a fool of yourself. The last words landed like a punch to the gut. Strahan's smile vanished. His hands fidgeted nervously, fingers tapping against the tablet he'd proudly held seconds ago. Around them, the silence turned heavy, electric. Denzel straightened in his seat, no longer dodging or deflecting. His posture alone shifted the energy in the room, calm, upright, but commanding. He looked directly at Strahan, his tone measured, his words sharp enough to cut through the silence. You say I repeat myself, he began, voice low but steady. Maybe that's because I don't have to reinvent who I am just to stay relevant. I've built something real. I don't need to dance for attention. Strahan's jaw tensed, the smile on his face trembling slightly. Denzel leaned in closer, his eyes locked on him. But you, he said softly, how many times have you faked a laugh on this show to hide how empty it feels inside? For a split second, Strahan didn't breathe. His grin faltered, a flicker of something real passed over his face, something uncomfortable. He tried to recover, forcing out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. I'm just doing my job, man, he said, his voice thinner now. That's all this is. Denzel didn't blink. No, he replied, his tone quiet but unrelenting. You're doing the job of someone who enjoys watching others lose control, so you can feel like you've got power. Strahan's forced smile vanished completely. He sat back in his chair, eyes darting toward the crew, as if searching for someone to save him. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Denzel didn't raise his voice, didn't gesture wildly. He didn't need to. The weight of his calm made Strahan's nervousness even more obvious. "See?" Denzel continued, voice still soft but with steel underneath. "You don't ask questions to understand. You ask them to provoke. You think if you poke long enough, someone will snap, and that makes good TV. That's not interviewing, Michael. That's manipulation." Strahan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He was rattled, caught between pride and humiliation, and everyone in the room could see it. Denzel sat back, his expression steady, almost pitying. "You think I'm predictable?" he added. "Maybe you're right. I'm predictable in one way. I don't play games. I show up, I tell the truth, I respect the work. You should try it sometime." The silence that followed was brutal. You could almost hear Strahan's confidence collapsing under the weight of his own act. The camera caught it all. The flicker of fear, the loss of control, and Denzel Washington sitting there like a man who just stripped the mask off someone pretending to be in charge. Strahan's mask finally cracked. His voice rose loud enough to echo off the studio walls. "You know what this is, Denzel? You're acting like some moral saint because deep down you're scared. Scared people will finally see you're not some untouchable legend. You're just another actor past his prime." His tone was no longer teasing. It was venomous, desperate. The audience gasped, some covering their mouths. A camera jerked slightly as the operator flinched at the outburst. Denzel didn't move. He didn't blink. The stillness in his body made Strahan's rage look even uglier. Then slowly, Denzel leaned forward, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through the air. "If I'm going downhill," he said, each word deliberate, "at least it's a road I chose to walk." His gaze didn't waver, eyes locked on Strahan's trembling smile. "You, on the other hand, you climb by stepping on everyone else. And when you build your career on people's backs, the fall isn't just fast, it's hard." The words hit like gunfire. Strahan froze, the color draining from his face. The crowd stayed silent, no one daring to move or speak. The sound of the studio lights hummed faintly, the only noise cutting through the silence. Even the producer behind the camera lowered her headset, eyes wide. Denzel's tone hadn't changed, but his calm had turned deadly. "You talk about respect like it's a joke," he continued quietly, "but one day you'll realize, respect is the only thing that lasts when the lights go off." Strahan tried to respond, opening his mouth, but no sound came out. The camera zoomed in just as Denzel's eyes caught the light, cold, steady, and unflinching. The tension was suffocating. Strahan's chest rose and fell quickly, his earlier bravado completely gone. Across from him, Denzel didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, silent and composed like a man who'd already won. The entire set seemed to shrink around them. The hum of the equipment turned into a faint ringing, the kind that fills the air right before something explodes. But Denzel didn't explode. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than Strahan's shouting had ever been. Denzel slowly leaned forward, his movements calm but heavy with finality. The studio was so silent that even the faint buzz from the lights seemed deafening. He reached down, unclipped his microphone, and laid it gently on the table. But before standing, he placed one hand flat against the desk, the gesture steady and deliberate. He leaned in towards Strahan, close enough that their voices didn't need to rise, close enough for the tension to be almost physical. His voice came out low, smooth, steady, but laced with steel. "The difference between you and me," he said, eyes locked on Strahan, "is that I act on screen. You act off it." Strahan froze, his mouth slightly open, the arrogance gone from his face. You could almost see the words hit him, not like a shout, but like a quiet truth that burned. Denzel straightened up, adjusted his jacket, and turned toward the cameras. Every movement was slow, controlled, like he was directing his own ending. "If anyone out there wants to know what makes my films different," he said, his tone calm but echoing with finality, "it's this. I know when to walk away from a cheap performance." The words cut through the air like thunder, quiet but impossible to ignore. Gasps rippled through the crew. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God!" But no one dared move. Strahan sat there, stunned, as Denzel stepped back from the desk. The red recording light blinked steadily, capturing every second. Denzel's presence filled the room, even as he began to leave it. His line, "I know when to walk away from a cheap performance," would later explode across social media. Quoted, replayed, dissected. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a declaration. The moment one man turned humiliation into power. Strahan blinked, his composure shattered, his voice barely a whisper. "You can't just walk out," he said weakly, but Denzel didn't even look back. His calm, unhurried steps toward the edge of the stage said everything. For once, the actor didn't need a script. Reality itself had become his scene, and he had just delivered the final line. Denzel turned without another word, his footsteps echoing through the studio. Slow, steady, unhurried. Each step sounded louder than it should have, the kind of sound that fills silence with meaning. No one moved. The audience sat frozen, the crew paralyzed, unsure if they were supposed to intervene or just let history happen. The only thing moving was the red recording light on the camera, still blinking, still live. Denzel didn't rush. He didn't look back. He just walked, his presence somehow growing larger with every step he took away from the stage. Strahan sat there, breathing unevenly. His practiced on-air confidence had completely vanished, replaced by a lost, panicked look. He turned toward the control booth, his voice cracking slightly. "Cut it! Come on, cut the feed now!" But no one moved. The director, the producers, the camera operators. They just stood there, eyes wide, locked on the moment unfolding in front of them. Nobody wanted to stop it. Nobody dared. The world needed to see this. Denzel reached the edge of the set, the light falling across his back as he stepped toward the exit. Behind him, Strahan finally looked up at the camera, his face pale under the studio lights, his composure completely gone. The camera stayed on him, every second feeling like an eternity. His hands fidgeted on the table, his lips trembled, but he couldn't find any words that didn't sound small. Then, just as Denzel disappeared from the frame, his voice, calm, distant, but clear, drifted back across the stage. "You wanted a memorable moment, Michael?" he said without turning around. "Well, here it is." Strahan blinked, his throat tightening as the studio fell completely silent again. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every detail. The host who had lost control, the empty chair across from him, the echo of Denzel's final words still hanging in the air. The audience didn't clap. The crew didn't breathe. The silence itself became the ending. Raw, powerful, and unforgettable. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, the studio remained frozen in disbelief. No one spoke. No one moved. What had just happened wasn't a publicity stunt or a staged argument. It was something real. Denzel Washington didn't storm out in anger. He walked out with purpose, leaving behind a moment that would echo far beyond the studio walls. Within hours, clips flooded the internet. Millions watched, replayed, and shared his words. "I know when to walk away from a cheap performance." It became more than a line. It became a statement about self-respect, about knowing your worth even when the world tries to test it. Michael Strahan, once known for his charm and humor, suddenly found himself at the center of a storm he couldn't control. The interview that was supposed to be another light morning segment became a defining moment. Not for its ratings, but for the lesson it carried. Denzel didn't need to raise his voice to win. He didn't need to fight to prove his point. His calm was louder than rage, his silence more powerful than any insult. And in that silence, everyone watching learned something about dignity, that it isn't given, it's chosen. As the world debated who was right and who was wrong, one thing became clear. Respect isn't a favor, it's a standard. And when that standard is broken, walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. If you were in Denzel's place, would you have stayed silent or walked away? Tell us what you would have done in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that reveal what dignity truly looks like.